While Easter may not traditionally be a gift-giving holiday, Eric Morris gives Oklahoma State the best gift of all by kicking off the 2027 class with the most important commit.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. We get to jump right into this quarterback conversation. Carson White is now officially, or at least committed to be, an Oklahoma State Cowboy. The dominoes that will fall out of this are likely to be absolutely spectacular. But ladies and gentlemen, we got him. We got the quarterback of the class that Oklahoma State needed to ascend up into the rankings. When it comes to this one commit, it currently has us ahead of where we were as an entire team last year. I think we finished last year number 69 in the country in recruiting. This one commit, Carson White, already has us at number 68. And the cascading of events that could come after this are precisely why we should be insanely excited. Not only would Carson White be one of the top 10 highest rated recruits at Oklahoma State from a quarterback's perspective, when you look at some of the other individuals that are rated 89 overall, you are talking about the Wes Luntz and the Garrett Rangels and the Zane Flores of the world. And we all know that a large portion of those guys didn't quite work out in Stillwater. But I will give the take and the bake. The take is I do think that Carson White is a more important get than Spencer Sanders even was in Stillwater, Oklahoma. From a football perspective, yeah, that might sound kind of crazy. But statistically, again, Carson White, 5,447 yards passing, his 2,100 yards rushing, his 60-some-odd touchdowns collectively are something that would put him on pace with Spencer Sanders. Oh, and by the way, Spencer Sanders wasn't able to hop on a baseball field and hit 500 or 22, 23 home runs either. That is why I do believe that Carson White could be the next Nolan McClain, except for maybe even more important, because Nolan McClain only played 1 year of Cowboy football before he focused on baseball. There is a large contingent of people that think that Carson White is a viable candidate to be drafted right out of high school for baseball, but he seemingly definitely wants to play quarterback. And seemingly when you have Obrate at your disposal in the recruiting realm of things, getting these dual sport dudes to Oklahoma State should be relatively easy. If you've got a guy that can play quarterback at this level, who can also play shortstop, who can also play center field at this level, why would Oklahoma State not be one of the top places in the country to exploit that? Because facilities across the board have never been a negative conversation at Oklahoma State, or at least ever since Boone Pickens kind of, invested into the football stadium. And then you had Obrate, and then obviously you have the Greenwood Center, and then obviously you have the new track and field. We have put so much into our facilities that there's not very many teams in the country that can claim that they're better than Oklahoma State, especially if you combine the two. If you're combining the facilities in Boone Pickens Stadium with the facilities at Obrate, this is an absolute no-brainer. So as much as UCF is excelling right now at baseball, it's still not the same. Which is why he's a Cowboy instead of a UCF Knight. It's the same concept about Houston or Nebraska even. Oklahoma State, when you're talking about these dual sport athletes, has something extremely rare to sell. Even if you were to talk about track and field, Dave Smith has got Oklahoma State in a legitimate position to be a track and field competitor. And with a 10,800 meter time, Carson White could also at least push to be a Division I track and field athlete. This is why I do think that he's better than Spencer Sanders. And numerically speaking, if you were to take Spencer Sanders coming out of high school and Carson White, who still has another year left, by the way, Carson White already 6'1", 210 pounds. Spencer Sanders was 6'1", 190 pounds coming out of high school. They both run a 4.4 40. Again, you've got 5,447 yards passing for Carson White and 10,329 yards passing for Spencer Sanders. However, there's another year left. And if you statistically put it together, he's already had a 34-yard season, 35-yard season, 3,500-yard season for Carson White. It is easily achievable for him to get up to that Spencer Sanders number when it comes to career rushing yards. Almost 2,100 yards rushing so far for Carson White, 44 touchdowns. That's not quite the 4,000-yard mark that Spencer Sanders put up, but from a touchdowns perspective, he's already ahead of Spencer Sanders at 44 compared to Spencer Sanders' 40. And again, in this season, will he be able to eclipse that? It's very, very, very possible. He was the district offensive MVP. He was also the newcomer of the year. Spencer Sanders, of course, was Texas Gatorade Player of the Year, Mr. Football in the state of Texas. So Carson White has a little bit of work to do. But again, he has that 10,800-meter time. He has a 23.6-inch long jump. And I think at the end of the day, athletically, Carson White does a lot of the same things that Spencer Sanders could do. But I think he's got a better arm than Spencer Sanders. I think you could make the argument that his decision-making is likely to be a little bit more enhanced than Spencer Sanders. And one of the biggest things, again, we talked about, could this be the future of Oklahoma State recruiting under Eric Morris? When it comes to the quarterback position, I believe so, right? Whenever you have that lineage of the Baker Mayfields of the world and the Kyler Murrays or Cam Wards, sorry. The list of guys that he has worked with to get to the NFL, it's absolutely remarkable. John Mateer, not Baker Mayfield, even though he did work with Baker Mayfield as well. Like that lineage of quarterbacks that have gone through and worked with Eric Morris or have been recruited or developed by Eric Morris, this is precisely why this makes sense. And another thing for Carson White is if there was going to be a continuous battle, whether it was going to be Carson White as the next quarterback or Luke Babin as the next quarterback, I appreciate him making this jump now. Because with his senior season upcoming, it is easily probable to assume that his recruiting in the football department is going to get a lot more intense. So getting this locked down early, absolutely massive for Eric Morris and company. And how often have we had this discussion? You really got to go back to Spencer Sanders. When's the last time we had a highly rated quarterback commit this early to give him a full high school season of recruiting on behalf of Oklahoma State, to give him a full complement of the 7-on-7 season recruiting on behalf of Oklahoma State? See, it's not just the position. It's not just that he's insanely talented. It's not just that he's a multi-sport dude who's going to do that multi-sport thing in Stillwater. I think it's the fact that this brings a lot more credence to this recruiting class. Like if you're a Javion Jones-Priest, you're one of the top running backs in the country. RBU, Oklahoma State, that designation, that's attractive. But knowing that you've got a guy like Carson White that is going to be, competing to be taking snaps in Stillwater very quickly, that gives you a lot of ammunition to say, you know what? I want to be part of this offense moving forward as well. We talk about some of the top receivers like Landon Williams. Well, now if you're considering Oklahoma State in this recruiting landscape, they've already got their quarterback this early on in the process. That's pretty rare for us. Like, let's be fair. Even MazdaLike Smith, who previously was in the top 10 highest rated Cowboy quarterback recruits of all time, I do believe that Carson White would have bumped MazdaLike Smith out of that top 10. Regardless, even MazdaLike Smith coming in, I don't think, it was early enough to reap the benefits of who else he could bring. And think about it. Zane Flores, kind of early, but coming from where he was coming at in Nebraska, there wasn't a lot of capabilities for him to increase the recruiting acumen. But this is in the middle of Oklahoma State recruiting country, Big 12 recruiting country. So now that he has this commitment out of the way, he can now recruit for Oklahoma State. So all of these games, all of these camps, all of these Elite 11s or 7-on-7s, now he can be recruiting for Oklahoma State and convincing guys, this is why you should come here. Because of this dude, because of this system, because of this coach, because of this development. It's nice to finally have one of those dudes in the fold this early on that can now help Eric Morris and this recruiting class come together from the offensive side of the ball. But we've already talked about defensively how many dudes are walking around with so much more confidence and swagger because of Drew Messmaker, how he carries himself, how he throws the ball. Even with Grant Jordan being the backup, there's a lot of security on the defensive side of the ball about what they're going to be capable of because of that quarterback position. So just because Carson White is an offensive dude, don't believe for a second that does not mean he doesn't have the cachet to sway some of these defensive guys as well. Because if you have confidence in your quarterback, it does allow you to do a lot more things defensively. Speaking of doing things defensively, be on the offense. Don't be on the defense, right? The way day is here. This is your offensive attack. If you've been thinking about upgrading your living space, this is the time to do it. We're talking about some of the best deals of the year on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, everything basically that you need to refresh your home in and out. During Wayday, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off and fast free shipping on everything, making it easy to find the pieces that fit your style and your budget. It's super easy to filter by size, style, price, so you're not wasting time scrolling. The reviews and photos help you feel more comfortable about what you're actually getting. And Wayfair's verified products are vetted by specialists, so you know you're getting quality. Whether it's upgrading a room, adding outdoor spaces, or adding something that ties your space together, it makes the whole process much more simplistic from start to finish. If you're utilizing Wayfair, the Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. So head on over to wayfair.com April 25th through the 27th to shop Wayday. That is Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Head on over to Wayfair today. Wayfair has every style for every home. Before we do get on off of here, I got to remind the fine folks out here, get squared away today with the Everydayers Club. Get the show ad-free with the Everydayers Club. Get down on the Discord chat. We can hoot and holler about whatever. We can talk about the brackets. We can talk about Cowboy baseball. You can get some internal miles per hour on the players and things of that nature. So make sure that you jump on in there, be part of the Everydayer Club, a.k.a. Regulators. Head on over to LockedOnOklahomaState.supercast.com. LockedOnOklahomaState.supercast.com. Go be an Everydayer today. All right, we get to jump into baseball. Thankfully, this is good news. The Cowboys swept Cincinnati, which is a miraculous story in and of itself. It's been a little bit of a struggle, but you take 2 from Dallas Baptist, and now you got a really fun game against a pretty hot Oral Roberts team coming up. And the irony of this whole thing is when we began the week, so when we all woke up last Monday, Oklahoma State baseball was in 12th place, sole position of 12th place, I do indeed believe. As of today, it's fun to announce that we are in sole position of 7th place. Now, is that where Cowboy baseball is supposed to be? No, but at the same point in time, for how frustrating things have been, you gotta give it up to Coach Blake Hawksworth and the pitching staff, because not only are you missing your premier guy to start the season and Hunter Watkins, but you also lose Matthew Brown before the season starts. That's 2 of your top guys before the season even gets going. And then Hudson Barrett shows that the healthy version of Hudson Barrett is still an All-American like he was a couple years ago at Grand Canyon. And then he gets hurt. Now he's shut down. And it felt like it was going to be something very, very small. So he was going to only be out for a week and a half or so, but it's continuing to linger. So Coach Blake Hawksworth is having to find unique ways to get more out of this bullpen. And you're having more guys step up and make the most of their opportunities. So I think it's exciting. Like Mario Pesca was always going to be the Saturday guy, but the fact that he has locked that thing down, Friday might be a little bit of a crapshoot. Sunday might be a little bit of a crapshoot, but you know what you're going to get out of Mario Pesca on a Saturday, and it's typically going to be enough to get you a win. And we've adapted, I think, a lot of ways in how to orient, how we're instituting small ball on top of the launch angle. And you got to give credit where credit's due. Colin Brueggemann is dropping absolute bombs. TP Wentworth, I mean, you could make the argument that he was the MVP because he had a couple really solid innings on the mound. He had a couple really fantastic plays in the outfield. He had multiple bombs in multiple days. He had multiple hits. He had found ways to get on base, and he's a young guy. Look at the young dudes. Norman, for a freshman, is insane. You have Remo. You have Ezra Essex. You have TP Wentworth. You have Parker Jennings. Speaking of, we haven't seen him in a little while. So at the end of the day, going from 12th to 7th is all we can ask for. All we can ask for out of Josh Holliday and company is improvements, right? To do what Oklahoma State's supposed to do, which is to win regionals and get 2 supers. Obviously, hosting supers would be great. But before this weekend, we weren't even really in the conversation, right? If you were to liken it to hoops, we would have began the Cincinnati series on the outside of the bubble. And we weren't even a bubble team, really. We weren't in the field of 64 conversation until this sweep of Cincinnati. So now we've at least crept into that door of Oklahoma State should be, could be, might be a postseason level team. And now it's insane that we're even having this discussion whether Oklahoma State's worthy of a postseason appearance. But, it's the standard. The standard is, in my personal opinion, it's still the standard. I don't think you get rid of Allie P. Reynolds Stadium. You upgrade to one of the nicest, if not the nicest stadium in the country, and then your expectations go down. To me, that doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense for Josh Holliday to not acknowledge the fact that this team has the capability to do a little bit of both. And you know what? Tom Holliday mentioned it in the broadcast. While Coach Hawksworth is working through all of this, right? You're missing 3 of your top 5 arms, and you found a way to piece this thing together recently. You're having to rely on a lot of young guys, a lot of freshmen, in a lot of scenarios. So we can look forward to the positives of Cowboy baseball, just like we can look forward to the fact that going from 12th place to 7th place in this conference is pretty crazy. We're going to depend on more chaos, but we have some of these teams ahead of us still upcoming. Now, after this Oral Roberts game, we get to hit the road and take on Kansas State. They're right below us currently. I think they're in 8th in the Big 12. So that's a series that you have to win. Do you have to sweep it? No, but a sweep, it does crazy things to give yourself a chance, right? Without this sweep of Cincinnati, we might still be hovering in that 9-10th place range. That one game is a very, very, very big deal. And that's just precisely why when you look at UCF at the top of the conference, it's going to be hard for anybody to catch them because they have a sweep over Oklahoma State. So if Oklahoma State proves to be a viable candidate to make a run at the Big 12, then that sweep over us is maybe something we look back on and claim, well, that's why UCF won it. It's because they had that sweep over Oklahoma State. So would we love to get a sweep out of Kansas State? Sure. But all you have to do is win the series, because if you win the series against Kansas State, you still got TCU coming up. You still got Arizona State coming up. You still got KU coming up. So the teams that are ahead of us in the Big 12 race, for the most part, are still on the schedule. And then we get to end the year with Arizona, a team that was good enough to win the Big 12 championship last year, a team that was good enough to make a fun little run in the postseason. It is kind of crazy to see how down Arizona is, dead last place. Nobody saw that coming. But that's the same thing as Cowboy football playing for a Big 12 title in 2023 and then having 2 seasons of 3 wins and 1 win. I mean, it happens. Welcome to the portal era. You can rebuild off of it. You can build a future roster off of it, but you can also get decimated and find yourself in a very precarious situation. The Cowboys now put themselves in contention here. And again, Oral Roberts, they started the season kind of sluggishly, but they've come on hot recently. They are now undefeated 9-0 in the Summit League. And again, so coming off the way that they kind of started the year, it didn't feel like they were going to be able to compete at this clip, at this pace. But they clearly are. 9-0 in the Summit League is a big deal. They just swept Northern Colorado from right up the road here this previous week. So both teams are coming off of a sweep. Cowboys over Cincinnati, them over Northern Colorado. And don't get it twisted. Like, they have these games circled, because this is their biggest opportunity to help in their RPI strength of schedule conversation. So is it detrimental for us? No, not necessarily. But would it be terrible for us? Yeah. And it would be remarkable for them. Coached by a former Cowboy, Ryan Fulmer. That's pretty cool. He was a catcher at O State in the 90s. ORU was expected to start right-hander Brennan Asher, who is 0-2 with a 5.63 ERA in 3 starts. The Golden Eagles, as a team, are hitting right at the 250 range, and their pitching staff is operating around a 4.3 ERA. But again, 17-12 is slightly deceptive because they've been extremely hot recently. Again, 9-0 in their conference play. They are 3-7 on the road, though. So if you're Josh Holliday and you're Oklahoma State, and you looked at this previous week's pitching staff, I mean, yeah, it was pretty impressive. Ethan Lund wasn't the dominating Ethan Lund that we are used to. He still had 8 Ks. Mario Pesca looked pretty daggone good. Put us in a position to be in the winner's circle on Saturday. And then Sunday, I thought we saw, a good mixture of pitchers. And now whenever you look at it, you're like, okay, well, Oklahoma State does have more versatility in the pen. They do have more guys that are capable of stepping up, as we just witnessed this previous weekend. So it's pretty fun to see this thing come together after a very tumultuous beginning of the season. But yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing Bryce LeBlanc come on, and Jake Kennedy's now coming on, and you've still got Drew Blake in there that can kind of, bridge a gap, and Noah Weck is still one of the top starters in the conference. And you're seeing more and more come together. So hats off to Josh Holliday and Cowboy baseball for getting a sweep that does at least keep Oklahoma State in the conversation for a team that can make a run in the Big 12. Speaking of making runs, it's that time. It's tax season. Taxes are not fun, and especially the old way of doing taxes, right? Trying to book an appointment, that's not cool. Sitting on a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if they're really going to get to your situation. But this is a year to get a major upgrade with Intuit TurboTax. They now have in-person locations nationwide, so you can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents will get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar that you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go on about your day. This is the relief of walking in and meeting with a real person and then walking out knowing your taxes are being handled the right way. Head on over to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you to get an appointment booked. The old way of doing taxes is insanity. Get rid of that. Do it the right way with Intuit TurboTax. All righty, last but not least, Cowboy hoops. You're still not hearing a lot of moving and shaking. You're not hearing a lot of craziness, which is probably a good thing. Shout out to Mike Boynton, former Cowboy head coach, now the assistant coach at Michigan. They just cut down the nets as national champions. So Oklahoma State's former coach, Mike Boynton, is now getting to rock a national title ring as assistant coach at Michigan. I think a lot of us knew whenever he went to Michigan as an assistant that was going to be big for them because the recruiting was never a problem. The relationship with the players were never a problem. It was simply just the X's and O's portion for Mike Boynton. So speaking of Mike Boynton, while Steve Lutz is still navigating the transfer portal, I don't know about you guys, but I personally would absolutely love to see a Mike Boynton era Cowboy come back around. The 6'7", 250-pound forward Justin McBride has entered the portal from James and Madison. He had a breakout junior season, and now he's exploring his options. This previous season, he played in 31 games, averaged 15.3 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game. He also chipped in 1.5 assists per game. He shot 49.4% from the floor and 40% from three-point range. Last year, he was at Nevada. He had 34 games played, 7.8 points a game, 4.1 rebounds a game, and just under an assist a game while shooting 52% from the floor and 24% from three-point range. And then obviously at Oklahoma State, it was kind of sparing, right? He definitely got a decent amount of minutes for being a true freshman that 23-24 season. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out for him for whatever reason. And now that Oklahoma State is looking to acquire some pieces in the portal, I think this would be a perfect full circle moment for Oklahoma State and Justin McBride, who at one point in time was a 4-star, like number 61 player in America. So he was one of those dudes that was allowing Mike Boynton to continuously get those top 10 level recruiting classes. He just could never get the X's and O's portion out of them enough to get enough wins to keep his job. So now that Mike Boynton has won himself a national championship as an assistant coach at Michigan, perhaps we can talk about a Mike Boynton era dude coming back to Oklahoma State. There's a lot of names that we probably need to be paying attention to. But I did find it kind of interesting the other day when I saw JMU transfer Justin McBride enters the transfer portal, and it being the same Justin McBride that at one point in time was part of a top 10 recruiting class in Stillwater that was supposed to get Mike Boynton over the hump, right? That was the recruiting class that was supposed to get Mike Boynton to the promised land to prove that the Cade Cunningham thing wasn't a one-off ordeal. And now he gets to go experience the national championship at Michigan. And perhaps Oklahoma State could make a run at like a Big 12 championship with a guy who used to be a Cowboy back in the fold. And of course, 6'7", 250. Since we haven't heard 100% that Robert Jennings is coming back, I mean, Justin McBride would not only be a good replacement, but if you can get that 15 points a game out of him in Stillwater, and then he does live up to the billing of what he was supposed to be when he was originally going to be a Cowboy. Anywho, so we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. Go be an everydayer, a.k.a. regulator. Until then, I appreciate what you do. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't. That's okay, too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, you're everything that makes this work. I greatly appreciate what you do. So do me a favor. Go do what you do. Hit on those stars. Leave us some reviews. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.